Hello, I'm Andrianne Philippou, the editor of Lube magazine, and I'd like to welcome you to Lube Media's new series of podcasts, In Conversation With, where I'll be talking to leading industry figures and decision makers in the lubricant sector who are sharing their insights and topical information with us. For the first podcast in our series, I'm delighted to welcome Mike Skypala, Managing Director of OATS Ltd, who has been with the company since 2018. So good morning, Mike, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Good morning, Andrianne, and thank you for having me.
So let me begin by saying that OATS began operating in 1984, which is relatively recent. Today, it's a leading global company, highly respected in the industry. But can you tell me something about how the company began and how it's developed to become the prominent data sourcing business operation that it is today? And obviously a little bit about the services it offers and your role within that.
Sure. So as you say, OATS was founded in 1984 by a couple of Castrol engineers who saw the need and opportunity for a lubricants specification database as the industry was expanding and specifications were becoming more diverse. Clearly it was becoming increasingly difficult for those operating in the industry to know exactly which products met which specifications. So they set the business up in 1984. It really sort of grew, I guess, predominantly as a physical booklet or catalogue type delivery for obviously for the first 2 decades, but as things went digital, clearly the business went digital as well. So it sort of continued as an owner-managed business and grew into a reasonable-sized business by the sort of mid 2015s, and was working with quite a lot of the big lubricant oil companies, and as you say, had sort of expanded out of the home market and the European market into the kind of global market. So it was a business that was sort of growing and doing well, but the owner then realized that it was probably beneficial for him to be part of a bigger business and agreed to sell the business to Haynes. Many of your listeners will know obviously the name, particularly those who are in the UK or have ever either been given or bought a Haynes manual, the iconic Haynes manuals that have been around for 50-60 years, so a lot longer. And Haynes at the time was also still a family-run business in the UK, had businesses in the US and Australia, and had also acquired a business in the Netherlands that became Haynes Professional, that was servicing the aftermarket with a digital workshop data product that was kind of similar to the manual, but obviously focused very much on the workshop market. So OATS became part of the Haynes family, and has sort of built and prospered from there, becoming, I guess, much more integrated in with the other aspects of the group in terms of the automotive aftermarket, and benefiting from Haynes Pro's Centre of Excellence for automotive data in Bucharest. And I guess when I joined, it was still at the time owned by Haynes, and part of the attraction, if you like, was that it was still a sort of family business, but actually a public limited business as well in the UK on the stock market. So we had that nice blend of it being sort of quite a close knit, but very well known brand, and had some of the benefits of being a sort of much larger public company. And then we were subsequently acquired last year by InfoPro Digital. So we've kind of morphed from being a very small owner-managed business to being part of a much now bigger digital business that has operations in many different sectors.
So interestingly, and I suppose that digital element is also reflected in society generally, and particularly in our industry, with the digitalization becoming such driver to how efficiencies and economies and sustainability is coming into operation as well, because there are many more companies now within our sector that are focusing on the digitalization of its services and its products and its offerings to help achieve those sustainability goals as well, I would imagine. So you are right in the forefront of that whole dynamic.
Yes, I mean, obviously, both the oil lubricants industry and the automotive industry are going through massive change. Digitalization obviously is a global phenomenon that goes across all industries, and certainly when I joined OATS, I saw that there was some real opportunities for the industry as a whole to benefit from further digitalization, particularly in the way that data is used, both I guess in terms of where we operate, which is more on the sort of product marketing and to some degree technical side of things, but clearly there's also a huge need to use data to drive supply chain efficiencies, particularly around how then you sort of achieve some of those sustainability goals through optimizing your production and your supply chain to make sure that obviously you're meeting demand but not holding huge stocks of product.
Yeah, I was really intrigued actually, because looking a little bit at your former sort of commercial experience, your previous sort of expertise, it was really honed in retail, wasn't it? In FMCG, fast moving consumer goods, which is a very different sector altogether to the one that we're in. So what challenges has that thrown up for you, sort of moving from that sector into this particular market? In terms of what you're delivering and what you're able to offer OATS?
I mean, the good thing about, not necessarily good, but the kind of commonality, if you like, is lubricants are generally a retail product, or certainly, obviously, in the passenger car market, they definitely are a retail product as much as they are a business-to-business product. Clearly, industrial, heavy duty products are more sold on a business-to-business basis, but you know the same principles adhere. So in retail, there's been again a massive shift towards online and using the data that's available through online to much better understand the profile of demand, what's driving that demand, and therefore what products best meet that demand. And there's clearly an opportunity for the lubricant companies to do that. More and more lubricant sales will be delivered online, particularly, as I say, in the kind of retail orientated market. So to actually understand who's purchasing, the patterns of those purchase, and what products then are best suited to deliver to those needs is clearly something that where I see retail has massively developed over the last 20 years, and lubricants can definitely benefit from that too. On the kind of industrial heavy duty side, I guess there's less visibility. It's much harder to understand what's going on in the market. We collect equipment data, specifications data, obviously across all markets. The manufacturers in the kind of off-highway industrial sectors are, typically less willing to share data. It's harder to find the data. It's more difficult to track things through the supply chain on that side. So where's going to be the biggest and sort of quickest win, it's going to be on the retail side. But ultimately, this industry is going to shift much more towards the kind of industrial sectors, just because of the nature of how electrification is going to kind of develop initially in the kind of passenger car market. So there is definitely going to be a greater need and obviously therefore a much greater value potentially in being able to use data and have that visibility in those sectors, in the more difficult to get hold of the data in the first place. So that's where I see there's going to be a huge kind of challenge for all of us, and obviously we need to play our part in that.
So with that said, and without giving any trade secrets away, when you say we collect data, logistically, how does it work? Because presumably you rely on information that's in the public domain, or do you access it through the OEMs, or do you look at sort of regulatory systems that are in place where expectations are that companies will list, the details of their formulations, of all sorts of elements that are related to the supply chain? How does it work on the practical level?
So it is true that obviously a lot of the data that we collect is from publicly available sources, but it's harder to get hold of data for the the kind of commercial industrial products and specifications and equipment, just because it's less required to be publicly available, let's put it like that, because obviously the use case is more business to business. So we do also rely on being able to obtain the information directly from the OEMs, either through portals where they exist. We obviously have to pay for data as well, and we collect data from third parties too. So it's a kind of combination of things. But definitely, if you just think about the park data, for example, park data for passenger cars, vans, and even trucks actually is so much more readily accessible than it is for the off-highway and industrial pieces of equipment. So everybody knows that it's a lot harder to really understand what's going on in those markets, but it's going to become increasingly important. I think there is a massive focus across most lubricant manufacturers and blenders on those markets, because they know that's where a lot of the continued growth is going to come over the next 10 to 15 years.
And interestingly, I mean, we've conducted another interview with you, which is going out in the Lube issue in June. And in part of one of your responses to one of the questions was that you talk about the fact that you see the trend is on consolidation in both oil, lubricants and automotive industries, given the huge investment required in the race to be carbon neutral. Do you think that's going to be an element in the heavy duty sector as well, that there will be more consolidation coming through?
I mean, it's definitely already happening. If you look at the OEMs, there's quite significant consolidation going on in trucks. There's already been a lot of consolidation gone on in agricultural OEM equipment. You've probably got 4 or 5 kind of global players now there. So inevitably, as those OEMs become bigger, they become more powerful, they're less willing to share data, they set their own specifications, they become sort of therefore it becomes more expensive to meet those specifications, to get the approvals. You have to put a huge amount of money into getting those approvals, as you know, and as all your listeners will know. So that consolidation is going to need to be tempered by having access to data that makes the more of a level playing field than perhaps it otherwise would do. So I believe part of our role is to assist all players in the industry, but particularly make sure that the independents have as much of a ability to kind of know the market, understand the specifications in that market, and understand where their products are meeting those specifications, where their gaps, etc., to give them as much of an opportunity to play in those markets as they become harder potentially to deal with from a commercial perspective against those OEMs.
Well, I think it's fair to say that sustainability is a key focus in our sector, and particularly so it's moving very fast, isn't it? The whole drive to ensure that we meet new targets, etc. How critical is your information and the information that OATS can offer to the decision makers and the regulatory bodies in helping to focus the sustainability objectives that we're all working towards ultimately?
I guess we don't play maybe a direct role on sustainability itself. It's more the information that we can both collect but then also deploy through websites, etc., and lube selectors for our customers and on behalf of our customers is also, or should be, about educating the users, be they your kind of average motorist or the professional user as well, to understand what differentiate products and where their main benefits lie. So which products are really, and obviously all manufacturers will claim that their products are good for fuel efficiency, for example, but there will be certain products that are very, very much focused on delivering improved fuel efficiency, obviously for particular equipment as well. So to educate the consumer user around using products that are better for fuel efficiency or are meeting certain emission standards, or do allow longer use of the equipment without requiring servicing. That kind of education, I guess, is partly what I see us being able to support any kind of sustainability message around the products. So that's kind of what one part of it. And as I said, the other part of it is us being able to kind of bring our data together with third-party data to provide that picture of a market and understanding, well, actually, how much is the hybrid sector of the market and the specifications for hybrid engines really requiring us to now start to look at our product portfolio and whether we're serving that part of the market. Is it actually going to grow to the level that we think it looks like it is at the moment, or actually is there something going to come in and sort of disrupt that market? So I think it's on one side it's using the information to educate via the websites that we provide, as I said before, in terms of lube selectors, and the other is around trying to ensure that everybody is really optimizing their product portfolio.
Interesting. And you've spoken as well previously about the fact that one of the challenges is really informing the consumer, because whilst we are aware of our industry and its viability in terms of, within the professional sense, consumers aren't really that bothered about the types of oil they use, the fluids that go into their cars, how they transport will get them from one place to another, the machinations of industry, how things move. So does OATS feel that part of its remit, if you like, is to engage more with the consumer and try and inform and educate them as to the value of the lubricants industry, what the reality is in terms of looking at their vehicles, etc. It's a tough one, isn't it?
It's funny because we're a global business. You do see very different attitudes and obviously engagement in different parts of the world. So in North America, still largely, the consumer knowledge and love of their motor car is still very, very high. And even though they will go to quick lube service kind of outlets and so on, they do take much more interest, and the number of automotive outlets there that sell oil is much higher than it is in Europe. So that there's a much greater understanding and knowledge in North America. Having said that, the impact of electrification is much lower there. So
yeah.
there's also a need, from a car parts standpoint, there's still a huge demand. So the education is less of an issue. There's already that engagement, but as obviously, North America will obviously under President Biden now put much more emphasis on both, the electrification of the car park and sustainability. The educating consumers around those changes and the products that serve those is obviously going to be key. But in Europe and you could probably say Asia as well, it's much more of a do it for me market, and there isn't that sort of desire really, except in certain segments, to kind of worry too much about what oil you are putting in your vehicle. You leave it to the professionals. So it is more than working with the professionals and making sure that they have that knowledge and understanding and can pass it on, obviously, to their customers. So it's very much more of a kind of workshop orientated piece. But obviously a lot of those in workshops often don't really have much understanding and knowledge of lubricants either. So there's still a need to build and educate and make sure that you kind of understand that what's going to help them become more sustainable and reduce their carbon footprint. And part of that is around, again, the stock levels that they hold. How many products do they actually need to have in order to serve the types of vehicles that are going to come in, and the types of specifications therefore that they're going to need to meet in terms of the products that they hold. So it's a kind of different role, but it's the same. I guess ultimately it's the same thing about making sure that you kind of engage. The professionals need to be engaged as much as your kind of average consumer does.
Looking at, it's been a gruesome year plus for everyone. As a company, though, you've done very well, haven't you? So what has it been about the last 15 months that has facilitated and enabled OATS to carry on working and actually to grow and to strengthen? How have you managed to keep sane among all the chaos that's been going on?
Yeah, well, I suppose the advantage of being a small business is it's easier to kind of adapt, and we're a digital business, so equally it's easy to kind of work in a much more remote way. The online kind of collaboration tools have massively improved over the last 15 months, so that benefited all of us to be able to kind of work in that way. And ironically, I feel that we've actually got closer to our customers.
Interesting.
Because you actually find that they're there. You can actually call them, and because they're not traveling, well, they are in online meetings, but they're not in sort of meetings in the office so much. So and nobody wants to do whole days of online meetings. So typically people are probably doing fewer meetings. So you can actually reach and talk to and engage with customers so much more, funnily enough. So that, we've actually found that we've been able to both build up our relationship with quite a few of our customers much more as a result, which is interesting. And because we're a global business, often we have had to work remotely. So Yeah, it's been interesting to see how we've been able to carry on working and actually in some ways work more effectively and efficiently, both internally but also, as I say, being able to actually get more interactions with our customers than perhaps we otherwise would do.
And will you continue with those adaptations and carry them forward, even hopefully when we've all sort of opened up a little bit? Well,
we have now a team in the US who all work remotely anyway, and our office in the UK, we've downsized our office and made it more of a kind of meeting hub effectively. So the expectation is most of our staff will continue to work from home predominantly, and use the office more when we need to kind of it's much better and more effective for you to kind of be together, you know, and you know, engage together physically. So that's typically in kind of workshops and, you know, where you're kind of really trying to, you know, get an initiative underway or you're trying to work through things. It's much easier to do it, you know, when you're all in the room. So I think that's kind of the mode that we'll kind of move to, and you know, our sort of need to get closer to customers, if you like, at least in the time zone, and you know, in terms of understanding better the markets that they operate in, where we bring new staff in, it will be in other markets. So you know, we won't have more staff in the UK. We'll be sort of going to where the action is, so to speak.
So we're talking global expansion, are we? And
we're talking
taking over the world, Mike.
Not taking over the world, but certainly being present in markets, you know, particularly Asia Pacific, clearly, but also Africa and South America. Because, as I say, it's important to kind of not only be close in the time zone and be able to deal with customers in the here and now, but also have people who understand those markets because they're actually operating in those markets, they're living in those markets. So yeah, that's kind of where we see ourselves growing, and therefore we need to work effectively remotely as a consequence.
Absolutely. And from our point of view, because I know, you know, we have had a number of your local reports which you feed into Lube magazine on a regular basis, and of course I guess you have to have that presence on the ground, as it were, or access to the people who would know what's going on the ground. Of course, it makes absolutely perfect sense. So does that mean, I mean, from your point of view, I know it's relatively recent, isn't it, that you began working at OATS, but presumably once travel begins again, will you be stepping out and going to visit those locations yourself personally, or do you just rely on your team over there doing that?
No, I mean, I think it's important. You know, I was actually in the US when the pandemic really hit there, and in Europe in terms of lockdowns. So, you know, I haven't been back since. You know, and it's important to me to understand and meet our customers face to face, and you know, sort of be in those markets too. So absolutely, you know. As soon as I'm able to, I will be resuming travelling. But I think it's important to have people on the ground.
One final question, Mike. What would you say to young people, young graduates looking to move into this industry? Do you still feel that it offers as much as maybe 5-10 years ago when people were coming through? I mean, is it something as an industry that you feel has great potential despite the obvious challenges that it faces at the moment, given the sort of need to protect and preserve our environment?
Definitely, I think the industries, as I say, both automotive and oil lubricants are going through huge change. And in fact, I was interested to read about you know, the whole sort of piece around tribology and the challenge to attract graduates and you know, the best in the sort of science community to become tribologists and to be part of the industry versus going off to do artificial intelligence or epidemiology. So it's epidemiology has become, dare I say, sexy because everyone realizes now how important it is to protect ourselves against viruses. So tribology and sort of broadly in the industry, the need to reinvent effectively how we transport ourselves in a way that's kind of environmentally sustainable, and the role that lubricants plays in that, super lubricity and all of the ways in which the whole sort of chemistry of lubricants is changing, to ensure that both fuels and lubes can be done in a non-carbon way. So yeah, it definitely feels like it should be able to attract the best and the brightest. I guess it's a question of how you portray it, because obviously the issue is that at the moment the industry is a bit on the back foot, and it sort of struggles a little bit with how it kind of communicates the message. It's like, we're going to be carbon neutral by 2050. I think the graduates who are coming out of university, and even those who are still in school, probably think that's way too far in the distance, and actually it should be, the industry should be challenging itself even more, and you kind of need people to come in to really drive that change and accelerate that change. So it definitely needs to bring in the best and brightest science and engineering in order to really challenge even the statements that are being made now, which are probably seen as, wow, how can we possibly become carbon neutral in 30 years? But as I say, governments and the younger generation will be saying, actually, no, that's too late. It needs to be done sooner. So we all need to be, challenging ourselves and the industry to say, how can we do it faster? What will it take for us to move even more quickly in these areas? And I think that's why you need those graduates coming in to do that.
And on that note, Mike, which I think is an excellent note to end on, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this morning, and thank you very much for your time, and look forward to more from OATS over the future. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you again, Mike, for joining us today and for sharing your insights with our audience on the first Lube Media podcast series. A short interview with Mike is also available to Lube readers in the June issue of Lube magazine. The extended full-length interview is also available to read on the website, along with this podcast. Thank you.